Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our session, Camaraderie and Community. So for those of you that do not know me, my name is Reggie Waller. I'm local here to the area, and I am the owner and head coach for Waller Endurance Coaching. I actually work with athletes between multisport, cycling, and running. And have been involved in the sport since 2005 with the Broad Street Run, and then I've competed in everything from triathlon up to a sprint to full distance Ironman. So now I've been spending most of my time coaching athletes, whether they're beginners or high performance athletes in this space, and then I give a lot of time giving back to the USA Triathlon community, serving as a board of trustee on the foundation. So I'm our moderator for today. I'm very excited to be here. We have a distinguished panel here, and we're going to have some great conversation. This is a small group, so we'll make this very intimate, but I think you're going to walk away with some great things here, from this discussion, as well as we talk around this particular topic. Because if you think about it, we're all, as I saw folks were coming in the room, there was waves and hugs, and, we may be doing multi-sport, we may be doing cycling or whatever the case may be, but you know what? This is a tight-knit community. We're all going to run into each other somehow, whether it's on the streets of Philly riding, Schuylkill River, or cheering friends on, but, this is, a very small and supportive community, and it's important that we take opportunities like this to be able to engage. So without further ado, I'm going to just read the quick bios from our panelists, and then we're going to go ahead and jump in. So to my left here, we have Jenna Foley. Jenna is a competitive athlete of 3 years racing with QRT Cycling and is the founder of Tandem PHL, a media brand and blog that focuses on purpose, healthy habits, and living an inspired life. In addition to working in on-air sports broadcasting, she is a lifelong athlete, purpose-driven leader, entrepreneur, teammate that has been featured in media content and national brand campaigns for companies including REI, Varlo Apparel, Trek, Specialized, and more. All in all, Jenna is passionate about carving impact and joy into life, both on and off the bike. Okay, thank you, Jenna. We welcome you. All right, next to our far left down there is Taffy Medley. And Taffy began her athletic career in 2014 as she turned 21. But she put 50 in here, but we'll keep it as 21. After medaling in her first ever 5K race, she's been hooked on competitive racing. Due to injury in 2017, she started cycling and fell in love with the sport. Since then, Taffy earned the designation All-American and USAT as a duathlete, became a Spartan, earned the V. Everestring Hall of Fame 2 times, and earned titles 2021 Rafa Cycling Club NYC Overall Distance Champion and 2021 and 2022 Major Taylor International Riding Challenge winner for total elevation and biggest elevation ride women. Wow, that's got me tired right there. Just the elevation, anything more than 100 feet, I'm tapping out. So kudos, Taffy. So Taffy is a proud member of the Major Knox Legacy Tour, bike from New York to DC, class of 2022, and will join the tour for her 3rd time this year. She is also a proud alum of the Philly Bike Expo squad and a current member of the USATF, USA Triathlon, Team Varlo, South Jersey Bike Crew, Kings Queens Rule Together Club, Philly and Dallas Major Taylor Cycling Club, and Rafa Cycling Club NYC. Wow, please give it up for Taffy. All right, and last but not least, we have Miko Q, PT, DPT, NCS, and he'll get into a little bit more of those later on, and there'll be a quiz at the end. If you pass the quiz, understand we're giving a free bike of your choice, so you may want to pay attention. All right, so Miko currently works as a physical therapist for the University of Penn Medicine at Home Department, delivering physical therapy services in Center City in the North Philadelphia region. He serves as co-chair of the Neurological Special Interest Group for Penn Medicine at Home and guest lectures, and is a lab assistant for multiple local universities on the topic of neurological physical therapy, specializing in clients after stroke, spinal cord injury, amputations, traumatic brain injury. He received his exercise science degree from Occidental College in Los Angeles in 2007 and clinical doctoral in physical therapy from Drexel University in 2012. In 2017, he received his board certification in neurological physical therapy from the American Physical Therapy Association. Miko is an Ironman finisher, completing an Ironman Mont Tremblant in 2016, along with multiple half Ironman races, Olympic and sprint distances. He is a community and accessibility advocate and co-chairs the Rails to Trail Celebrate Trails Accessibility Day, focusing on adaptive trail use. He has presented at workshops teaching bike mechanics, basic manual wheelchair repair, and maintenance. He has been focusing heavily on cycling and gravel riding the past few years as a 4-year member of the Philly Bike Expo squad. So give it up for Miko. All right, that was a mouthful there. I know these three individuals, and I've had an opportunity to engage with them, over the past probably 3+ years now, and it's just incredible to see what everyone is doing in the community. And as you can see, as we were putting this panel together, this is a very diverse panel. You have Jenna, who's in cycling broadcasting. You have Miko's doing triathlon and working with adaptive athletes, and you have Taffy racing and starting her career at a later age. So it's we're all making a big impact in various ways, and 2 of these members happen to be on the same squad, so Miko and Taffy being part of PBE squad. So again, as I talked about earlier on, that community is very connected. So one of the things I want to do, like the first kind of category I wanted to focus on, is the personal journey. So Jenna, we'll start with you, and I'm going to ask you this question: is what inspired you to take this initial leap, and then can you share a specific moment or catalyst that motivated you to start your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I come from a super athletic family, thankfully. I grew up in a military family, so we moved a ton, pretty stable household, and my mom really did a great job every time we'd move, finding us activities and sports to be a part of. So with the exception of like a handful of sports, I've played pretty much all of them, everything from competitive double dutch to figure skating to soccer to volleyball into my adult years, and then as an adult I really transferred a lot into when I got into my early 20s, really moved a lot more into weight training, as most of us kind of move out of those more like sports you do as a kid. We move more towards into like the gym and outdoor sports, and so I started training a lot more, started really just becoming a more involved athlete, and then I was like, maybe I kind of want to get into this race world, and so I was like, let me just jump right in. So I decided to sign up for a 10-mile Tough Mudder. Never ran more than like a mile and a half in my life, so I was like, let me do 10 miles through the hills. So, and then obviously it also has like extreme obstacles, mixed throughout. So I had to put a lot of, considerate and very dedicated training towards that. And I actually convinced 6 of my friends, who probably are all crazy, to do it with me. So the 7 of us did this Tough Mudder obstacle course. And at the end, I actually had a friend named James, so we finished it. We're covered in mud. My friend James looks at me and he's like, okay, so what's next? Because he knows I'm a very dangerous question. I'm a very goal-oriented person. I like having something focused to work towards. And so he was like, what's next for you? And he actually does triathlon. And so I kind of was like, I don't really know. I just learned I don't like to run. Not for me. And so he was like, have you ever thought about triathlon? And it kind of was what planted the seed in my mind. And so if I can make one point, it really, if I think about the moment that really was a catalyst for me, it was somebody who was in the sport world actually extending an invite to me and planting that seed in my mind. It was never something I had considered. It was never something I thought about as a goal or something realistic or really had any knowledge of or access to multisport, especially cycling and swimming. I just hadn't, other than like riding a bike as a kid or the YMCA pool, I didn't have experience in those things. So he asked me, he was like, have you thought about triathlon? So for me, after that, I kind of was like, I was like, and it really planted the seed of interest for me. And I, to this day, have not done a triathlon, if you're wondering. But that's what introduced me to cycling. So I started looking for a bike, and I would send him 10 Craigslist bikes a day and be like, is this the right bike? Is this the right bike? Like, is this the right bike? And he was so patient with me. So that was definitely one of the key moments for me, was having somebody who was in the world of sport give me that access and that entryway to it. And then I started cycling, the pandemic began, and pools closed, gyms closed, I still didn't like to run, and so I really fell in love with the sport of cycling, and that's where it all began for me. And then on the competitive side for racing, it was, again, a very similar situation. I had some of the men in my club, shout out to KRT, which is Kings Roll Together Cycling Club. They were like, hey, we're all gonna go to this race, do you wanna come? Now, at this point, I have no context for racing. I've never seen a criterium race. I don't have context for it. I don't know what it is. And so I was like, sure. So again, it was somebody inviting me into having access to a space that I didn't know about, didn't know existed. So I showed up to a race in 2021. I had no idea what chaos I was about to witness. And by the end of the day, I was like, this is crazy. And I was like, and I think I'm gonna do it. Yes. So I went home that evening and I actually started emailing race organizers because I had no idea how to like sign up for a race. I was just emailing them directly. And I started training to start criterium racing. So I've been doing that for the last 3 years. But those are really the moments that I look back on that stand out to me, were really someone who had access to the multi-sport space, extending an invitation and making me aware of what was taking on in the sport and different ways that I could be involved.
Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, extending the invite, that's huge, So we, I don't know if James is here today, doesn't sound like it, but thank you, James, if he's listening to the recording. We appreciate you for giving us Jenna here. So Miko, same question there.
Yeah, I mean, so my background was I played football in high school all 4 years. I was probably a little bit bigger when I played. Everyone always surprised, like, what position did you play? Were you quarterback? Were you running back? I was actually a middle linebacker, and my neck was a lot thicker back then. I was all like legs and neck, that was it. No upper body, could never bench press more than 215 pounds, but I plugged the hole. I was in there. And it was getting injured that made me become a physical therapist, just because I was seeing physical therapists and wasn't having good results. But due to injuries, I ended up not doing football anymore. I stopped. I played 1 year in college, and then I stopped doing that and basically just stopped exercising, and I gained a lot of weight, and was trying to find a way, like, how do I go back into fitness without actually playing this competitive sport? It was really hard to find another outlet for getting my energy out and exercising, and I found running actually to be the first thing that got me into I guess becoming an athlete and working out. And I did the Broad Street Run in 2009. That was my first time. But through running, I got injured, and getting injured was horrible. It was one of these things where I was like, well, what do I do now? I can't run. I found running as my outlet. What do I do now? What's next? And so to the help of my cousin Albert, who's here actually, he's like, let's start riding bikes. It's low impact. It's something you can get into. I bought my first bike. It was a 8-speed, 1996 Jamis, and I rode that thing all over Chester County. It was I moved from LA to Philly and had a job out in Downingtown, and just that was the second. This is the second sport that got me out and moving. And then actually I took a break from even running and cycling for a while, because then I started PT school and I had to travel all around the country for different we call them rotations and residencies. And the catalyst, I would say, that really got me into thinking about using fitness and using multi-sport as a way to challenge myself was, I can really remember I was working with this patient who had a brain injury. He was in a car accident, and he was my age. And I remember that impact was really something that made me almost step back and, you know, have this life-changing moment, like in my, you know, my late 20s, where I was like, wow, like this can really get taken away from you really, really quickly. And just to see like pictures of him in his room and seeing him just, you know, living his life, and then now he's in a situation where, you know, everything has to be done for him. He has a, you know, tracheotomy, breathing tube, and his families are supporting him. And this is out in Austin, Texas. I was working at a rehab hospital. And if any of you have been to Austin, Texas, there's Lady Bird Lake around there. And I remember just like driving home and then just like pulling over, and I was like, I'm just gonna run Lady Bird Lake. I was like, why am I gonna do it? It's like, because I can, you know? And I remember it was like the sun was setting. It sounds like a movie. The sun was setting. I'm sitting there jogging. I'm sitting there crying. I'm just like, this was like an outlet for me to be like, okay, I gotta do this again, and I gotta do what's hard, because what's hard is something that's gonna make me grow and that's gonna appreciate it. So I was running and biking, and then of course again my cousin Albert goes, hey, we should start swimming too, and we should start doing something called triathlons. And I was like, damn it. It's like more stuff to buy, you know? But it was that moment that really started, you know, bringing me into the sport, and I did my first triathlon in, so 2012? 2012, yeah, he was there. 2012, and it was the Philadelphia Triathlon, where we swam in the Schuylkill River.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was all in, you know, I trained all summer for this thing. We swam in the Schuylkill River, rode around Fairmount Park, and ran a 5K, you know, on MLK Drive, West River Drive. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And honestly, at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot harder things that are out there. And for me, it became this, you know, thing to do that would just really appreciate the human body, human movement, and, you know, how blessed we are to breathe, walk, and do what we do every single day. So that was my moment.
Yay, Miko.
Thank you, Miko. And I could attest, you know, Miko, you know, lives by his words. I happened to look up, and we were in Penn State for the 70.3, and all of a sudden I see somebody, you know, smiling and running by, and it was Miko, and he was celebrating his birthday, you know, doing a half Ironman. So, you know, that moment, you know, has definitely transpired and, you know, gone multiple years for him. So, you know, congratulations, Miko. And then Taffy, we'll round it out with you. Same question about your personal journey.
Okay. Athleticism was the furthest from me, I can tell you that. I grew up as a artist, musician, singer, all through elementary, you know, childhood, middle school, high school. But my nickname was Fatty Taffy, so I did have a side of me that worked out, knew to stay fit all these years. And as I got older, as he alluded to, 2014, I'm approaching my 50s. I really need to get this metabolism up, because now my body's changing. All right, I got to stay on top of this, because I don't want to live up to my old nickname again. So I started running, and a friend was the catalyst. A friend of mine who worked at church I went to asked me to do a 5K with her. So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I run on my own, so why not get into it? So I told my husband, and, you know, I started training for it a little bit, and I placed in my first race. So anytime you're going to place the top 3, it's like, oh, I'm just way too competitive. So now I'm hooked. So I'm running every weekend. I have a 5K. Every weekend I'm racing. Then it got to the point where, wait a minute, well, I'm only doing this 5K because it's over in 20 minutes. I can do 2 5Ks in one day. Sure, I'll do one here, and then I'll go and do another one. So I did this for weekend after weekend after weekend until I finally got injured. So plantar fasciitis in my foot. They said, it'll never really go away, so you really need to lay off it for a while. So I said, oh, honey, who's a cyclist and who happens to be in this room, my husband, I said, I gotta start, I'm competitive, I have to do something. I can't just sit here, you know, and not do anything. So he was cycling, and I said, I wanna get back into riding, which I rode, you know, used to ride when I was young, just as a means of transportation. So he got my first bike, and we started indoor cycling with Zwift. And of course, when I get into something, I get really into it. So riding. I hooked up with our local bike group with my husband and friends. And you know, when you're one of the only few females riding with men, you're getting stronger and stronger. So, okay, what can I do where I can incorporate the running and the cycling, because I can't just run? He says, well, you're not competing against cycling. You're not going to race, so you need to do something else. So I said, okay, there's duathlon. How about I do a little bit of riding and I can do a little bit of running, because I can't swim. No one wants to do duathlon. If you can do a triathlon, most people go the triathlon route because you don't have to do the running portion twice. But since I don't swim, I can't swim, I started competing in the duathlon field, and I found out that I was pretty good at it, you know? So again, the catalyst was the injury, really, that got me into the sport of duathlon, which is what I'm in right now. Having a great time with it. I thank my friend who invited me to run, and I thank my husband for always giving me the tools I need to stay on top of my game in the sport. So mine is really short, okay? That's it, that's my story.
Thank you, Taffy. And I actually had a chance to meet Taffy, 2 years ago at the Women's Tri. And, you know, I'm standing there volunteering in the transition area, and I hear somebody come up to me and say, Reggie, where's the finish line? And I look, and it's Taffy, and I'm like, oh, it's over there. And I was like, oh man, this, you know, that's a bummer. Like, you know, she's done with the race. Like, she went off course. And I look at the stats later on. Sure enough, Taffy won overall. You know, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not surprised. So it was,
I'm still mad.
Taffy's, so, you know, very, very competitive. I'm glad she didn't pull a Spartan race and, you know, jump over the railing there. But yes, so you know, Jenna, one of the things I wanted to kind of understand is, you know, we have these doubts and uncertainties when we kind of first started out. So what did you kind of face? What did you overcome to kind of, you know, continue pursuing some of those goals that you had, you know, in the cycling, you know, realm?
Yeah. I started as a beginner. So I feel like I have a ton of experience in just feeling new at something. And if I could give a piece of advice that I felt like was really helpful for me, was just to actually embrace being a beginner. And, you know, sport is something that really causes you to confront your own ego pretty quickly. And the sooner you can do that, the sooner you're able to learn. And the list of insecurities, I mean, I could go on forever. It was, I'm going to this group ride, I'm consistently the only female here. You know, I look at what the sport tradition, what cycling and multisport can traditionally look like, and it doesn't look like me. It was the obstacles of how do I find a helmet that fits my braids. It was, I feel uncomfortable on my bike, but I'm in a group ride that's all men. Who do I talk to about what proper garments are? Like, there's so many layers to overcoming wanting to do something new. But one of the things that I just kept reminding myself was that nothing great happens inside of your comfort zone. And so I just had to keep putting myself out there. And one of the biggest mantras I have for myself is to remind myself, like, I'm doing this, and like, fear, you're just gonna have to come with me. Like imposter syndrome, we're doing this, so you're just gonna have to come along. Like, you're getting on the plane with me. Like, I'm going to do this, and fear's just gonna have to do it with me. That has been something that has really brought me a lot of peace and a lot of stability when there are so many obstacles to overcome, especially in these kinds of sports, swimming, cycling, running. There's so much with just even the thought of, like, you have to go physically put your body out there in front of people who are going to see you, who are going to judge you. You may have insecurities. You may feel uncomfortable in what the proper attire is. There's so many layers to it. And then another thing for myself was reframing what success looked like. So for giggles and for context, in my very first criterium race, heart rate was probably, I think I looked at my heart rate monitor on my Garmin, it was 179, like I was about to pass away on the starting line. And there was just a handful of us, so it felt even more like this fishbowl of, like, I'm going to fail in front of everyone and just be a public disaster. And that is actually what happened. I took this is my first ever race. The starting whistle blew. I took turn 1, I took turn 2, and then I saw the sky. I crashed on my first lap in my first race ever. I didn't know what to do. And I just had this moment where I was like, I have to embrace being a beginner. And I just have to confront that this is where I'm at. But it taught me how to reframe what success looked like in overcoming insecurities and my obstacles. So fast forward to, that was a race that was at the end of the season, so I didn't have many other options to redeem that experience. I did re-enter the race. I finished in 4th. It turned out okay, but it was so incredibly humbling. and it was embarrassing, and I just was like, I don't know how to overcome this. And so for myself, I was like, one thing I do know how to do is build a plan. So for me, my plan was at my next race, I reframed what success looked like for me, and told my friend Alexis, who's here today, I said, my goals in my second race ever, I looked at her and I was like, stay upright and hold on tight. Those were literally my only goals. And so for me, it was reframing what winning looked like. And I came in dead last in my second race ever, but for me, I didn't crash, and I overcame that fear of my previous experience. So for me, I actually feel like I won that day.
There you go.
And for me, that has really been the mindset I have tried to implore with tackling everything, whether that's going live on a pro racing broadcast for the first time ever. I had so much fear, so much imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm gonna look like a joke. But it was like, fear, you're just gonna have to do this with me because we're gonna do it anyway. And I kept saying to myself, like, nothing good is gonna happen if you just stay inside of your comfort zone. So that kind of a little bit of light on what some of those experiences were like for me.
I definitely love that, reframing our goals, because we go in with one intention and then, something happens and then, we have to kind of shift. And, that second race you said, stay upright and hold on tight. It's, those small wins add up to something big. And then if you think, you talk to those individuals that are professionals, been doing this for a long time, yes, they started out just like us. And, some of us in this room just maybe want to do this casually, and that's perfectly fine. So, Jenna, I appreciate you kind of, sharing your story there on some words of encouragement. And, we'd like to kind of kick it over to Taffy and Miko, and we'll start, Taffy, with you. Is, what advice would you give those considering entering into multisport, like, duathlons and such, based on your own starting experience?
Okay, well, I didn't know anyone who was in the sport, and I read as much as I possibly could just to gain some knowledge as to what was necessary, how to transition, watch the videos. You really need to educate yourself if you don't know anybody who can kind of coach you into that. So I read about what I needed to pack, what a transition looked like, how I should transition from, the bike to the run, from the run to the bike, what the timing should be, and how they calculated the numbers in order to give you rankings and everything. Of course, I'm already thinking, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it well. All right. So depending on your personal goals, educate yourself. And then, even though there wasn't a lot of people who looked like me out there, I just set up. You go for what you know. You just go out there and do it. Give it a try. See where your starting mark is. You don't know how well you are or how good you can do something until you try. So go out there, see how well you do. Look at your numbers. Compare them to others if you want. If you don't want, then just finish. All right. But my advice is just educate yourself. So at least you know what you're doing. You can't always educate yourself on the full course all the time unless you actually do a trial, but educate yourself on the sport, what you want to do, give it a try, see how you feel, there's exhilaration at the end, and then set a goal for your next race, because once you do it one time, you're going to want to do it again. So give it a try. That's my advice.
Amen. Miko, same question.
I think there's always a funny joke that comes up in my head, like, I guess funny to me, it's a dad joke, but they always say, how do you know triathlon in a room full of people? It's like they're gonna go up and tell you that they do triathlon. And everyone knows somebody that does one, and I think it's just like keeping yourself open and knowing that one person that, there's not a lot of triathletes, and knowing people that do that and asking them advice and just being open to information. There's a lot you can learn on your own and watch YouTube videos, but you'll just be surprised, and it's putting yourself out there, asking questions, and finding out where the places are to swim. Because when I first started swimming, I was in a pool, but I have to get in the open water. Like, how do I even find an open water? And I remember I just went into a random bike shop, and I was just like, hey, you have triathletes that come in here, right? Like, yeah. It's like, where do they swim? And it was just this, moment where someone was hurt in the back. It's like, hey, you do triathlons? And one of the bike mechanics was like, yeah, I do. It's like, where do you go and swim? And just like that community connection starts to happen. And they suggested you should check out this place in Medford. You can go swimming there. Jason Kildare, ETA coach, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with that whole background, but, it was just an amazing, this magical place out in the Pine Barrens where you can go and swim laps, quarter-mile laps. You pay for a membership and you can go for the day. Nice. And everyone that you meet there is just like, hey, you're crazy too. You're here with us. And then through that, you start to make more friends. And I remember we made a friend in the parking lot. He was just like, hey, you guys do triathlons? Like, yeah, we're training for our first one ever. And the funny story was, one of the guys was super friendly, uber friendly, was like, hey, yeah, take our numbers down, we can, if you have any questions, you can give it to us. And so, yeah, sure, like, yeah, we'll take your numbers. It was overwhelming because sometimes you can get too much information. And I remember, like, 2 years later, I was swimming in Sweat Gym over here, like, on Arch Street. It was like this underground, like, basement pool. And it was, like, late at night, like 9 p.m., and this other guy was swimming, and I saw his race cap. And I was like, oh, like, do you do triathlons? He's like, yeah, I do. So he's like, we should connect, and, we should train together. And I remember him giving me his number, and it popped up. Like, I already had his name on my phone. I was like, this is weird. Like, why do I have your number? And it was from that lake experience, like 2 years ago. He's like, oh, I remember meeting you, And we've been like friends ever since. But yeah, it's just asking. Don't be afraid to ask. And it does help when you find groups that are explicit in their mission statement. People that are open to educating. Finding that is going to be really important, and we're just fortunate enough in Philly that there are so many of those groups, and it starts with being, just being open.
Yeah. No, thank you, and that's a nice segue into our next kind of focus areas, community and inclusivity. And Jenna, I wanted to kind of put this question to you, and thinking about the sports community, how has it enhanced inclusivity, accessibility, and really dismantled barriers for a wider audience?
Oof, that's a heavy question. Such a big question. It's a wonderful question, and those are two things. Accessibility and inclusivity are two things I'm very passionate about, but they feel so big that I imagine even you guys hearing the question, it's difficult to kind of wrap your brain around. How do you tackle things like that? How do you see change, when there are disparities and things that you want to see change within those two things? And so it would be a joke for me to try to think I could have some answer that solves or sheds so much light on that, but I can speak about the small way that I've chosen to tackle those certain things, which really is through social media and like the work I do in broadcasting. And there's some really amazing people doing wonderful work when it comes to inclusion, diversity in sport, making our spaces more welcome and more accessible. And I think a lot of it comes from not reinventing the wheel, but finding out your own small way to shine a light on the wheel or fix one of the broken spokes on the wheel, and support the wheel that's already running and people who are already doing amazing work. And think about people like Taffy, people like Aisha McGowan, who's the first ever U.S. professional African-American cyclist who is a female here in the States. And there's an amazing quote from a woman. Her name is Sandra Douglas Morgan. She is the current president of the Las Vegas Raiders, and she's the first ever woman to hold that position, and she's the only current woman holding a president's position in the NFL. She said an amazing quote in an interview I heard recently where she said, if you're the first to do something, because she gets asked about it all the time, she said, if you're the first to do something, you have a responsibility not to be the last. And that really struck a chord with me because I think about things like sports being an inclusive space, being an accessible space, and a lot of us mentioned that we didn't really know about certain sports or how to be involved in certain sports until somebody invited us in. And a lot of times the invite in now is through media. It's through, I saw somebody repost it on their story, or so-and-so did this amazing event and I saw the press release for it, or it's a bicycling magazine post, or somebody talking about it, or going live and tagging an account. And so I'm really, really passionate about storytelling and media and how those things play a role in tackling, making the space more well-known. And then also, when I show up, it shows other people who look like me, hey, we're in this space too. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really important to me, especially when it comes to broadcasting. There's no other females of color who do the work that I do when it comes to broadcasting and social media content. And so I take a lot of pride in that. And I also think I mentioned Aisha McGowan. You know, she is the first in her position racing at the U.S. pro level. She just came off the World Tour racing last year, and she started the Abundance Project, which is a grant program that provides full access to women of color who are at the beginner level to racing, and sends them to national races with a full spread of support, whether that's nutrition, transportation, like peeling you off the ground if you do crash in a race, every level of support you could need to lower the barriers that there are for people to enter the sport. And so I think about that in light of the media side, where what if Aisha had never allowed us to tell her story? What if she never presented herself, even though first she's like, this is uncomfortable for me. She's much more introverted, but she's like, if she'd never let anyone take her picture, she never, shared her story online, we wouldn't have the Abundance Project. We wouldn't have, some of the teen girls who I just saw riding with her in Spain last week saying, man, Aisha can do it, so can I. And I'm someone who was a recipient of being in that program, and it was such a wonderful experience. But she's changing the landscape of what the sport of pro cycling and just cycling, I think, at all levels for the African American community looks like, by building out this program. And she's making sure she may be the first, but she's not going to be the last. And I think that is where I've decided to focus a lot of my efforts when it comes to sports being accessible. You have to know about it before you can think, man, I can go try that. Then that creates a space that's more diverse and more inclusive.
Thank you. So I'm going to stay on the topic of community here, and the one thing I hear, and Miko, I'm coming your way with this one. I hear this in the multi-sport space a lot is, oh man, I would love to do a triathlon, but I can't swim. What is there? And Taffy talked about duathlon, and I know recently Miko did a relay. With the team. So, Miko, I guess when you look at this, right, when we talk about multi-sport and, we talk about, opportunities for people to get in that first time, what advice would you give those individuals to say, hey, I can't swim, I'm just a cyclist, and, but, who's going to do my run? Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the relay and what you've seen?
Sure, yeah. I think it's been exciting to see more and more relay teams, and I know just from a statistical standpoint, even a lot of the Ironman races and sprint races, you're seeing more relay teams pop up, and I think it's an intentional effort to show folks that it's not just about doing all three. It's not like the sport where it's impossible to get into. It's kind of Jenna, Taffy talking about it's exposure, and sometimes just having somebody there doing the bike, you have to watch your teammate go and swim. So seeing them do that, then you go, wow, that's somebody that I know, that I'm close to, I personally know, and I know how tough they are, and they're doing it, and it makes it doable. It makes it possible when you have that personal connection with somebody, and that they basically inspire you to do it. The tough thing is just it's a lot to think about doing it by yourself. So if you find again, going back to that tribe, going back to those people that you trust, to be able to share those fears of running, share those fears of swimming, I think it's important. And a relay is just a really great way to just dip your toe into it without the fear of failing, because you're doing it all together, and the success is that you finished as a team. And I think that the camaraderie, that community, even in that micro setting, is something that then can further yourself, where you go, you know what, I'm going to try 2 of these, or I'm going to try all 3 of these eventually, just to know that it's possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. And was that Albert's idea to do the relay, or
whose idea was it? I'm trying to think.
I think it was my idea.
He's really just getting me all this.
So there we go. That community and accountability.
That's right. That's right. But it was my brother. He did the bike portion, and it was the very first time to participate in anything Ironman related. And he was there. He was there at the finish line for my very first Ironman. He did cheer me in as I finished that. So yeah, and it's just like. It's all about inspiring each other and inviting folks to these spaces and to these races, and because you may think, oh, they're going to be bored. Not, you know, they're not going to enjoy it. But, you know, again, just seeing the energy. If you've ever been to one of these races, you know, half or even a sprint, and just to see people crossing the finish line, and you're just like, huh, they can do it, I can do this, you know. And sometimes just getting folks to those spaces, and so just always being open, always having open arms, and always having an open invite is really important.
Yes, this is very important. You know, you get out there and look at some of these events, you know, and you're like, oh, well, I can't do it because of this. And you put up all these roadblocks, and you just got to go out there and experience whatever kind of race it is, run, cycling, multisport, and you'll be surprised. There will be people out there older than you, younger than you, heavier than you, classic bike. I remember I was in transition at New Jersey State, and the guy next to me had a fold-up bike, and I remember seeing him on the course, and you know, that was his, you know, probably his first triathlon. But you know what? He was out there, and you know, like Jenna said, you know, you just sometimes have to just embrace it. You go out with what you have, and you know, you get it done, and nobody's going to be asking you, oh, so what, you know, what kind of, you know, equipment did you have, this, that, and other. They just see, oh, you did X. Wow, that's incredible, you know, and unless they're kind of in that space. But the average person is not going to be asking you about your time, the bike, and you know what nutrition and gear you're wearing, you know. So we all inspire, you know, a lot of folks. So Taffy, you talked about when you got into duathlon, right? A lot of this you had to learn on your own. So you know, now that you're, you know, a seasoned athlete, you know, how can you and others in the room kind of mentor those newcomers in the sport, so that way, you know, because I heard Jenna touch on a little bit, you know, before, and Miko as well, is, you know, not fear like, hey, I can't ask questions. So how can we play a better role as, you know, seasoned athletes to be those mentors directly or indirectly?
I always see when people compliment or draw attention to things that I do, or mention they saw a race I did and congratulate you, I usually will say, are you interested, or you run, why don't you try this, or why, you know, sometimes it's that invitation that they need to get out there and try it themselves. So I think the best thing to do is to plant that seed in someone else's mind that if I can do it, you can do it too. You know, there's a lot of gratification in crossing the finish line. So as I do consider myself a mentor in some ways when I see someone, whether it's KRT or it's the Rafa New York, or if it's Philly Bike Expo squad, is I always say, so what else do you do other than cycle? A lot of people run, a lot of people swim. So I've even brought back to South Jersey, like, we should do, you know, a relay. And some people have said, can't get my husband to do the swim part, but I think we can, if you encourage other people to take a little piece of the pie and keep edging them on, that someone will, you know, be encouraged enough to go out there and try it. So just inviting them. And just planting the seed is what I would say. And then when they have questions about it, you know, make yourself available. All right? Because not everyone had that opportunity to speak to someone or knew someone who was in the sport when they started. But as far as community goes, the reason I joined a lot of the different clubs I joined is because I live in South Jersey, but I'm always, you know, I'm affiliated with the Philly groups, 3 of them. Then there's Major Taylor, that's international. And even though I haven't met a lot of people in real life, there's always that social media, there's messaging, there's Zwift, there's Zoom, there's a lot of different methods or platforms that you could use to communicate, grow, learn, meet people, all right? But yeah, put yourself out there and join a lot of different communities, okay? And you'll get to learn and be more comfortable with the sport. Because everyone in this game, they're crazy just like you. They're friendly, they're crazy, you know, they got a desire to do tough things, and they're really open to the conversation. So that's what my advice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I actually wanted to touch on this as well. As I think about when it comes to like entries, the barriers of entries to the sport, is what's really helpful is thinking about like where we all started. And I think about when I showed up to some of my first group rides, like I didn't know how to shift my gears, I did not know how to climb the hills, I didn't know how to ride safely in a group. Miko was one of the people who was at a lot of those like first rides that I went to and took the time to be available, to answer a question, to be a resource. I think of some of the strong riders who were people who helped me when I first showed up in sport. It's very important that now I don't just be someone who takes from the sport, but I also give back. So I make sure, as I see Miko and Taffy do as well, that we go back and do those things that were done for us, we now get to do. So like something I'm excited about this year is I'll be leading a local ride to help people who are newer in the sport. And I think about, and this is a ride that I wish I had when I had started, and these are things I'm gonna do that a lot of people when I first started were doing for me, and it's so meaningful to now be someone who gets to do that for other people entering the sport as well. So I think that's a big thing too, is remembering like where we all started from, and then going back and doing those things for others.
Okay, thank you. And I told the group, to be on their toes. We'll, have some light questions as well. And they didn't believe me, so, I'm a man of my word. So here we go.
Off script.
So, what's your favorite meal after a ride? Because I know all of us ride, a bike. So, this is a level playing field. So you get done that ride. What's the first thing? Restaurant, coffee shop. What are you going to? So start with you, Taffy.
Pizza, pizza, pizza. That's what I want to eat. I want to eat pizza. I usually bypass the freebie stuff, and I want a pizza.
Okay.
I can't get a pizza, a parfait. A yogurt parfait would be great.
Wow.
All right. How about you, Miko?
I don't know. I think I open the fridge and whatever's in there going in my mouth. Like, I don't discriminate different foods. Food.
Feed me, right?
Yeah, just feed me. I can't think of like a favorite thing, but just the fridge.
Okay. And Jenna, how about you?
I'm the same. The first thing I see, it's probably the first thing I see, a recovery shake if I'm really training hard. It's probably a noodle dish, like some kind of Asian noodle dish, a Thai food noodle dish, a pad Thai, stir fry with noodle. Like it's some kind of Asian noodle dish. And a chip and a fruit and a bar and a gummy while I make it.
Everything. No discrimination. I love it. I love it. Okay, so one more here, and then we'll open it up to the audience for any questions. So what's your mantra when you're when you hit that roadblock and you're in that dark moment? Like, what is your kind of go-to phrase or what is it? So Jenna, we'll start with you and work our way down.
I definitely have two. One would definitely be reminding myself that you don't grow inside of your comfort zone. Nothing great happens inside of your comfort zone. You can't grow there. Nothing inspiring happens there. And that's not the kind of life I want to live. So I don't know if that's a mantra, but that's something that consistently runs through my brain. And then I think for life and off the bike and just in general, I mentioned it earlier, is I just remind myself that fear is going to have to do it with me. And it's not going to be something that I allow to stop me from doing the things that I want to pursue in life.
Okay, thank you. Miko?
Yeah, I remember listening to this ultra marathoner. It was, and I really want to give this person credit, but I can't remember who it is. And I remember listening to this audiobook, and you might have heard this before. I had this on my road ID. I have this like initials written out because it's pretty long. I can't fit it on there, but it's the fact that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah, that's great.
And I feel like that's something I say a lot in my brain when it's just like, pain. We're choosing to do this. We're choosing to climb up this hill. We're choosing to have our lungs burn, our muscles, and it's just physiologically, it's just what we're going to go through. But the suffering part, that's really optional, because what's your why? Why are you doing this? What's making you come back? What's making you take another step? And that suffering is truly optional. And I find, for me, it's a hard saying, but it's gratitude and like, okay, I can do this, and I can use my body to do this hard stuff. And I've shared that quote to just a lot of the people that I work with, and just have the privilege to just rehab and to recover. That this is really hard, and it's gonna be painful, but how can we frame this where we're working towards goals that's going to be important to you? And I think that's something that we can apply universally to, even something that we do recreationally. And I think that's just a powerful saying that I'm always just saying in my head. Why am I out here? Suffering is going to be optional.
I'm stealing that.
Yeah, I know. I love that.
I know. I want to give credit.
Ask question again.
Right. And Taffy?
Mine matches my breathing. Don't stop, get it. Don't stop, get it. I'm going when it really gets tough. Don't stop, get it. Don't stop, get it. In my head, over and over and over. It hurts. Yeah. Okay, it hurts. I need something I can jam to. So it's don't stop, get it. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get to the finish line. Okay. I'm trying to finish this race. Be done with it. Hit it and quit it. Don't stop, get it. That's it.
Taffy.
I love it. I love
Put that on
it. Thank
audio
you.
tape.
Yeah, we got it on the recording.
Good.
Put it
Hey.
in my AirPods.
So before we wrap up here with the final question of the panel, what I wanted to do is open it up for our questions of the audience, and what questions did you have for our panelists? I think we have about time for about 2 to 3 questions here. So any questions?
I had a question for Jenna because I follow you on social media and I have the honor of getting to see you in person on the bike and off. And I was just curious about how you've built this relationship to dreaming big and aiming for big things, and sometimes that means we don't always get what we're going for, and you pick yourself back up. And I would just love to hear like how you really invested in like working that, and share some of your insights that you've learned in the last year and how you see yourself, moving forward.
Wow. Thank you, Sandra. I think a lot of that is the way I was raised. I think I'm a naturally sky's the limit, half glass full kind of person. I think my default setting is there. One, because how my parents raised me. I had, particularly my dad. So if there's any dads in the room, like, kudos to you and so much respect to you and love to you. I'm a product of a really great dad. And my parents did a great job of really kind of supporting that I could do anything and be anything. So to any parents in the room, like don't ever overestimate, or I should say underestimate that investment and allowing your kids access to things, especially like how much stuff they allowed me to try as a kid. Like, why was I in competitive double dutch? And then it was like, okay, you want to do archery? Let's do it. So some of it is that, and some of it is I like to put myself around people who think the way I want to think. And so one thing I've always been intentional about from high school on was looking for people who were headed the direction in the way that I wanted to go, and trying to align myself with that and be around those people. So I think one of my favorite quotes is from an author called James. His name is James Clear. He wrote the book Atomic Habits. If you spend any amount of time with me, I'm going to bring this up. It's a wonderful book on building habits to support the kind of life that you want, and it's really shaped a lot of how I carry myself as an adult. His quote says, we don't rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. So one thing that I don't know if it's probably a mix of my natural skills and just what I love to put effort into is creating systems to help me get where I want to go. And that's where a lot of that, like, if you're gonna have to do it with me because we're going anyway, comes into it. And I also heard somebody recently this week say a different version of that was, we don't rise to the level of our dream, but we fall to the level of our team. So I think I have a natural gift for finding people who have that same mindset, and that creates an environment for me that really fosters dreaming big for things, and kind of this, like, you can really do whatever you want. Like, there are kids on YouTube making millions of dollars talking about pizza. Like, you really can do anything in this life at any age, and I'm such a firm believer of that. I'm very passionate about empowering people around me to also think and be that way. So yeah, some of that is just like my nature. I think it's my natural skill set, what God has given me, and how he created me, and then it's also environments I intentionally put myself in. So thank you for that question.
Beautiful. Awesome. I think we have time for one more question here before we wrap up. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
You all sort of talked about being injured in your running. That was sort of like a common thread for everybody. I'm a runner, and so I also understand that. I think my question sort of is, it can be so demoralizing, like in the run when you're already an athlete and you're good at other things. You're like, I should just be able to put shoes on and go. There must have been a moment that you're like, no, okay, like, how am I going to work through this? And like, I'm just kind of curious, what was that spark? You know, you all talked about community and somebody was there for you, but like, there was like that internal, maybe something that triggered you to, like, I got to put my shoes on and like work through this, and not just like, you know, abandon the run.
I would say that's your competitive nature that's going to make you want to get up there. You're going to mourn a little bit. I know I did. You're going to mourn the sport. You can't do it exact, or just put your shoes on and get out there and run. So you have to take some advice and take the time to heal. There has to be the healing, there has to be the therapy, there has to be the insert in your shoe, whatever it's going to take depending on your injury. And then once you've done that, then you have to find out what level of running you can still do safely without injuring yourself. And that's where the duathlon came in for me, the duathlons. I could run, you can do the super sprint, which is very short. You can do the sprint, there's different levels too. So you have to get in where you fit in, is what I would recommend. But yes, you are going to mourn not being able to do it immediately the way you're used to doing it, but you still want to win. So you're going to get out there, you're going to exercise, you're going to, keep your athletic ability and your aerobic fitness where it needs to be through another sport until you can get back on your feet and run again. So that's what cycling did for me. I could keep my aerobic fitness by cycling, whether it's 150 miles a week on the bike, indoors, especially in this area, and then running a lot less, maybe 15, 20 miles, but then it keeps your body fit enough that you can do competitive duathlons for me, so. There is that period of mourning.
I just feel like running is just so pure, right? It's simple, it's easy. You put on shoes, and you feel, again, accessibility. If you have roads that you can safely run on, universally, just do it. People do it without shoes. Cycling, there's so much gear, there's so much stuff. Even swimming, you have to find pool accessibility. And running was something I just never got away from because of the fact that it was something that I could always tell folks to get into and to embrace, because it's just so simple. You go out and go a little bit faster than you walk, and you're running. And some people are just like joggers, runners. Doesn't matter. Just go faster than what you naturally move. Feel that wind in your hair. That your breath is gonna get, your heart rate's gonna go up. It's a gift and a curse as a physical therapist that whenever I get hurt, I'm like, damn, this is gonna take me 3 weeks to recover from. Or I have this ache here. It's like, it's that nerve compression again. So I use multisport. I use triathletes. I use running, and especially the rehab. I use that I put as much effort and passion into that as I do the actual sport, because doing that allows me to do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's something to keep in mind, that when you do get hurt, the challenge isn't over. The challenge is now to learn about your body, learn about why you were injured, and to put as much effort into your rehab as you do into that 5K, that 10K, the half marathon that you're training for. And it becomes another challenge. It becomes another physical challenge to just continue pursuing your goals. So for me, that's it. It's just, if I get hurt, I'm just going to use my rehab as my next challenge.
Okay, well, looking at time, I think we can go on for a little bit longer, but I know our session has come to an end. But I want to thank each of our panelists for sharing their experiences here on their journey, and thinking about community and camaraderie. And you could see that each of them have unique bonds, but we're still coming together. And we've talked about how our paths kind of crossed, and still will. And I'm sure a lot of us here in this room, our paths will cross somehow, some way. So again, thank you to our panelists. And thank you, again, for joining us for our session. So this concludes our session. We'll be hanging out for a few minutes if you had questions for them individually. But enjoy the rest of the convention here, okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.